is the Nashville2 Podcast with your host, Edward Fox.
G'day, viewers and listeners. It's Ed Fox back for another episode of the Nashville2 Podcast. Nashville2 is about where we tell your story because you're Nashville too. Today, our special guest is Bob Ravner. And Bob, you've got a unique situation. We haven't had one of you guys on before. You have decided to throw your hat in the ring for state representative.
Well, that's right, Ed, and thanks for having me. You know, as a 35-year business person and almost 6 years in the military, I've never run for public office before, but I've been involved in the community for a long time. And a number of people that I'm close to, and with all the challenges that we're facing, decided that this was the right time for me to step up and take my experiences and my passion for this community and represent the people of Williamson County at the state level.
Cool. And so which district is that you're running in, Bob? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. It's District 61. It's a seat currently held by Brandon Ogles, who has decided not to seek re-election. And it essentially is Williamson County only and major parts of Brentwood and Franklin. And all voters have to do is go to their local election information and find out which district they're in. But essentially, it's the southern part goes east and west from 96 all the way up to Old Hickory Boulevard, and as far out to the west as Old Natchez Trace and as far east as the Wilson Pike area. And so it encompasses a large segment of both Brentwood and Franklin, but just those two communities.
Right, and we're seeing huge growth. So let me ask you this, and we will chop and change a little bit here, but why? Why did you decide? I mean, because, you know, I'm sure you've talked about it just like I have before too. It's like, oh man, do I want to subject myself to that? I love helping people. I love helping the community, but do I want to subject myself? So why, Bob?
Well, first off, I care. I care about this community. I care about our families, the communities of Brentwood and Franklin and this county and our future. And when you think about me, I've lived in 10 different states all over my life and have spent the last 14 years here in Williamson County and decided to retire from corporate life in Williamson County. And I now have 3 generations of us living in Williamson County. So there's my wife and I, my wife of 40 years and I, who decided to retire. And then I've got 2 of my 3 kids and 1 of my grandchildren are here. And when you think about the great thing that Williamson County has become through lots of hard work, the passion and commitment of so many people that came before, I want to ensure that Williamson County remains a magnet well into the future. And as you think about our challenges, we are like a magnet today because of the quality of life that's been created. And because of that, we're also likely to double our population in the next 20 years. And we have to ensure that we're going about that in a smart way.
Right. And so tell us, how can people support you, or how can they find out more about where you stand and what you do?
Well, I do have a website. All anyone has to do is go to votebobravner.com and they can learn more about my candidacy, or just Google Bob Ravner and they can see all the experiences and things I've participated in over the years, and will understand that I bring a lot of experiences to this office. Having never run for office before, I recognize that we have many challenges in front of us and a real commitment to this county continuing to be great. And I believe that my real world experiences, my family situation, and the things that I've had to do in the real world will make a difference at the state level.
That's awesome. So, Bob, when you're not running for office, what are you doing?
Well, it's one of the reasons why a lot of people approached me and said that I would be a good representative for this community, is because I've been plugged in for a long time. Today, if you think about my level of activity, I'm a Rotarian, part of the Downtown Franklin Rotary. I'm the incoming president of the Downtown Neighborhood Association. I'm the vice president of the board of the Friends of Franklin Parks. I've served on the Franklin Civil War Historical Commission. I've been a member of Goodwill Industries International Board of Directors. As I joke with my wife, when I retired from my last corporate position with Dollar General, I retired to simplify my life. It's now more complicated than ever. I'm just not getting paid for any of it. But you know what? I'm getting to meet lots of great people like yourself, other people in the community through many of these volunteer efforts. And I recognize the goodness of people. When I was recruiting people to come to Tennessee with Dollar General, I would use as part of my recruiting pitch, one, it is the most genuinely friendly people I've ever come across in all of the places I've lived. And secondly, there is something for everybody in this area. When you think about what we've created here in Middle Tennessee, you've got strong traditional family values in place. We've got a fiscally conservative, low tax base. We've got fantastic schools, some of the best schools in the country, as much as within the state, and an exceptional quality of life for anybody that wants to live in an urban setting, suburban setting, or even rural setting. We've got it all here in Middle Tennessee, and we've got to ensure, and all the leaders who are in place have to ensure that gets maintained over the coming years. There's a tremendous amount of growth underway, and we've got to not just control it, but do it in a smart way. I'm a pro-business guy, I'm a pro-growth guy, but at the same time, we have to be creative about how we use our resources to ensure the infrastructure is in place and to ensure that we're building the right kind of places where that quality of life can be sustained over the coming years.
Right. And that obviously sounds like it's a no-brainer, right? Because a lot of people speak to that, but then they don't have the skills to put into action. And your background and just some of the things that you've gone over that you've done since you've retired. Tell me a little bit about your military background.
Well, sure. Well, I'm a graduate of the United States Naval Academy. And why that's important is I firmly believe in my heart that the military gave me a start in life, as it has done for so many other Americans before me. When you think about my upbringing, I grew up poor, and I didn't have connections, prospects, or money in order to really get me started in life. And with that backdrop, no one in my family had ever graduated from college before. And so by putting my efforts into athletics, academics, and a lot of great teachers and coaches put their arms around me, took me under their wing, and saw the potential in me. And I put my efforts into academics and athletics, which got me to the Naval Academy, which then landed me in the submarine force in the Navy. And that early, immediate, not only leadership responsibility and experiences, but the burden of helping defend our great nation along those ways. And you think about how the military can mold young individuals. I was a 23, 24-year-old, imagine that, standing at the top of the conning tower of a nuclear submarine that weighed 8,600 tons and had more firepower on it than all the bombs dropped in World War II.
Wow.
I was 23, 24 years old, 150 men aboard, at sea, still the greatest strategic deterrent we have in this nation to avoid nuclear catastrophe. And it's an extraordinary burden that not only gave me the great experiences necessary to start further along in my life, but that experience that as a young junior officer, having to lead other men, often twice my age, and with vast amounts of experiences, gave me a great foundation on which to build the rest of my life, which then led to, after almost 6 years of active duty, to my business experiences down the road.
Right. And so what brought you to Middle Tennessee and to Williamson County? Was it work or was it retirement?
It was work. I was recruited here to come to work as the chief people officer for Dollar General right after it had been taken private. And I came in with a new management team. And while I had gained a lot of experiences and felt like I made continuous improvements in the companies that I had been employed at before that, I really feel like what we were able to accomplish at Dollar General was transformational, not only for the company, but for the industry. When I got to Dollar General, no one was talking about the dollar discount segment, much less Dollar General. Today, you can't have a business conversation, certainly among the competitors, without talking about how strong Dollar General is and what Dollar General and the dollar discount segment has become. When you put it in perspective, so when I got there were about 8,000 stores. When I left, we had doubled the number of stores to almost 16,000. We had added about 65,000 jobs to the American economy. And while I'm extraordinarily proud of all of that, what makes me even more proud is the fact that of the 16,000 store managers, we had 12,000 of them had been promoted from within. And Dollar General, under my leadership, achieved the #1 ranking in the world, according to Training Magazine, for training and development of its employees. And when you think about what helps individuals achieve their own goals and aspirations, next to family, education is the key that unlocks that door for me. And to me, education doesn't stop at secondary school. In this day and age, as fast as technology is changing, as fast as the world is changing, we all have to adapt with it or we fall behind. And what we were able to do at all the companies for that matter, but certainly at Dollar General, was to take anyone with just a high school education and build their skills and capabilities through our own training and development methods, so that we coined the term changing people's lives in our company, because you could start out as a part-time sales associate and within 3 years be running $1.5 million store. And then when you have that kind of a foundation, you can then take those skills and go to any other company, retailer on the planet and succeed and have a great living. But even beyond that, we took the creativity of really helping people change their lives to a new level. As we were looking at supply chain challenges within our own business, we owned over 13,000 trailers and traditionally had used third-party trucking companies to carry the goods from store to store. Well, most people don't realize there's a shortage of about 70,000 truck driver jobs in the country. These are jobs that pay about $100,000 a year. And so as we were looking at our inconsistent third-party trucking companies, we said we've got to start a new private fleet and bring our own people on board so they can live the Dollar General culture and then also continue their careers. But beyond that, we said, you know, what is it that really makes people succeed in any organization? It's the cultural fit, because we can teach everybody to do a different job, but if they don't fit culturally, it really doesn't matter how good they are at anything.
Yeah, I find sorry, go on.
I took the idea of saying, well, we already have these great people that are great cultural fits. And why is it that we have a shortage nationally of 70,000 trucking jobs? And I theorized it's really because of two things. Well, most people can't afford to leave their job, give up a paycheck to go get the training to become a CDL licensed driver, much less pay for the training,
right?
Which costs thousands of dollars. And so we solved that problem by saying, we're going to take our best employees, offer them the opportunity to get CDL licenses. We're going to keep paying them at their hourly rate while they go through the training so they don't give up a paycheck. We're going to pay for that training so they don't have to pay for that. And then they're going to get a CDL license, and they're going to go from making maybe $15, $16 an hour to $85,000, $90,000 a year as soon as they take on those truck driving jobs. And so it became a win-win. And that's why I still believe we started and helped people change their lives because of efforts like that and creative solutions like that.
Well, and we see it with businesses all the time, right? You've got some HR background as well. Is that true?
Right. I was brought in as the chief people officer. People is what I do. I fundamentally believe that people are the key differentiators between how successful an organization can become. And we really leverage the talent and the internal movement of people to see that Dollar General not only grew, but could sustain that growth over years. And even as of today, Dollar General is approaching 20,000 stores, and I couldn't be more proud of that legacy of, even though I'm no longer there, the people that we trained and promoted to be more senior in the company continue that trend of success.
Right. And it's interesting because you and I could just talk business for the whole episode. And obviously Nashville2's worth is more than that. But the other thing I find interesting is a lot of companies talked about their mission and their vision statement throughout the years, right? And we hear this vision and mission statement. But what we very rarely hear is what you just touched on, which is their culture statement. What is the culture that drives their mission and their vision without it being just a bunch of words that nobody knows except that it's on the annual report and they talk about it at the AGM? But really, it's the culture that backs the company, how you back the people, what you expect out of your people, what your people expect out of you, and how you live up to that. So I'm glad you brought that up. So let's talk about that on a personal side. Tell us a little bit about your family.
Well, sure. You know, as you think about the mission and vision statement, it was really simple for us, serving others. And I also think that helps frame up who I am and kind of how I've tried to live my life. While I was in the military and that service to the nation, even as I was growing my family with my wife and I got married a year after I graduated back in 1982. We're celebrating 40 years next month.
Congrats.
And had 3 beautiful children, 4 beautiful grandchildren. And I've tried to instill that service to others it's not just who you are, it's a way of life. And even while I was going through the work world, I coached virtually every one of my children's teams, sports growing up. It's the one thing you could say I could get there to do those things. And so as a result, over the span of 20 years, I coached over 50 youth teams. I took the skills, capabilities, and passions that I've had, not only being a former athlete myself, I played baseball at the Naval Academy, also coached at the Naval Academy, took those skills as a player and a coach and try to apply it to younger lives from as early as 5 years old all the way up to middle school years as they were playing on these amateur teams and got really involved, got to meet the parents, know the parents, got to see these kids with bright eyes and great hopes thrive in an environment where they're encouraged and watching the light bulb go on when they were able to get a skill done and those kinds of things. So I've always had this belief of serving others that then carried me forward into other volunteer work I've done throughout the years at a national level, being part of the President's National Hire Veterans Committee, the Secretary of Labor's Veterans Council for Outreach and Education. I was chairman of the State Workforce Development Board under the Haslam administration. And so all of these things I've done in a volunteer way have also not only given me additional experiences, but helped me continue to give back to the community that I love so much.
Right. And tell me a little bit about, so you're in Williamson County. And so one of the things we like to do on the show is we like to talk about maybe some hidden gems. So my wife and I, we've been married 32 years, bought a business in Nashville in 2020, moved to Franklin, Tennessee in December of 2021. And so we're pretty much new to the area when we're recording this. It's, June 22nd, 2022. And so what are some of the cool things you like in Williamson County that might be considered a hidden gem? Just give me one to start with, and we can talk a little bit about it.
Sure. Well, one of the reasons I joined the Friends of Franklin Parks Board is that I was very interested in trails and connectivity, the walkability of being able to get from one place to another. And so it's really important for me here. And one of those hidden gems that I call it the crown jewel of Franklin is the park at Harlinsdale Farm. It's a 200-acre plot of land that will never be built on with not only historic buildings on it that we are going to be renovating, but at the same time, it's got a trail system, a lot of natural habitat right around it. It borders the Harpeth River. It's got a boat launch that's right there. And a lot of people don't know about it because it looks like a working horse farm from the road. Right. And obviously, with the construction that we've had ongoing for the last few years, it's been a little bit more challenging for people to get there. But there's some great events there that people ought to know about. The 4th of July celebration. I've been to the Nashville one, and it's a wonderful demonstration and billed as the biggest in the country now. But Franklin has its own 4th of July celebration that's partly sponsored by the Friends of Franklin Parks and the city of Franklin that runs it, which is a great place for families to spend their time. The Pilgrimage Festival is held there the last weekend of every September, and there are headliner groups that will show up there. And so if people haven't been to the Pilgrimage Festival, that's another great activity to be part of that's there, which is also within a half a mile of the downtown Main Street, Franklin downtown area. And so you can walk to all those places. And along with Harlinsdale, we are working on projects that will continue to connect the rest of downtown Franklin through Harlinsdale and beyond. In fact, there's a pedestrian bridge that's going to be built across the Harpeth River at Chestnut Bend, which will provide the first opportunity for people to walk directly to Harlinsdale from that side of town without having to go all the way around to Franklin Road. So that's one, I think, hidden gem that people really ought to take advantage of.
So if people want to find out information, we'll put it in the show notes. You'll shoot me the link and a little blurb on it, and we'll have that in the show notes, folks. So you'll be able to look that up on all the podcast platforms and the video platforms that we publish this on. Okay, so we're on a roll. Why not just go into another one? Do you have another hidden gem for us?
Sure, and it's largely for hikers, but Radnor Lake up in Brentwood is, I think, a real hidden gem. It's a beautiful, walkable trail system through just natural beauty and landscapes that all kinds of wildlife. It's around a body of water, the lake, and in the natural habitat of wildlife. And so just a very peaceful, serene, wonderful place for people, families to spend time and walk around. And while people I know often will go there, I think newer people to the community and others who may be visiting may not know of Radnor Lake as a place to go. So I think that's a big one. And then when you think about what makes this county so historical, it's not only that places like Franklin were founded in 1799. We had a major Civil War battle here on November 30th in 1864, which was part of the larger Tennessee battle front, if you will, as Hood and his army were moving north to try to retake Nashville. And so the center of the battle, which happened by accident on November 30th, was only because the bridges were out crossing the Harpeth River. The Union Army had to dig in, and the Confederate Army attacked them. And it is often called the 5 bloodiest hours of the Civil War. There were upwards of 10,000 casualties. It was one of the few battles fought during the evening hours. It didn't start until 4 p.m.
Oh, wow.
It's the only battle I've found where were more generals killed from one side than any other battle in the Civil War. There were 6 Confederate generals killed in that battle alone. And when you think about the Carter House and where the Union Army was dug in and was really the central area of the fiercest fighting, and this almost 2-mile front of Union breastworks, all the way over to the other flank where Carnton Plantation is, and where the Carnton Confederate Cemetery is, and where the Widow of the South book was based on Carrie McGavick, and the work that she did to bring dead soldiers to her family cemetery and bury 1,500 of them there, to all of the surrounding areas. You know, through our Rotary group, we cleaned the headstones of most of the graves at Rest Haven Cemetery and City Cemetery. So that's right within walking distance of downtown and the Carter House. And so there are so many nuances and wonderful historical spots for the Battle of Franklin. But in my mind, being a history buff in general, a military veteran as well, and someone who has a lot of passion as serving on the Civil War Historical Commission, it's one of the more underrated, underreported battles of the entire Civil War. And I actually think it's one of the most pivotal.
Right. Well, and just the thick history around this area is amazing for people that want to dig into that too.
Well, and you know, you think about just the founding of this. So we live in downtown Franklin now on one of the original lots. When you get a deed for downtown Franklin, it still says original lot. And the founders, so the original land grant for here, Anthony Sharp, who was a Revolutionary War veteran, and a lot of Tennessee was settled by Revolutionary War veterans from North Carolina. He's buried in Franklin. He sold 600 acres to Abram Morey, who's buried here in Franklin. Some of the oldest homes in Tennessee are still here. One of the 5 oldest homes, the McMahon House, which has just been placed on one of the sites to save by the Heritage Foundation, was built around 1805 before it was expanded. There's, to your point, there's just so many different things that are historical in nature here, and that a lot of what this was once called the Western frontier is something that is still all around us, and a great thing for people to experience.
Right. And it's kept a lot of its charm over the years. When you go down to downtown Franklin, my wife and I love walking around and driving through there, and what they've done on the square is great. And the businesses are vibrant in the downtown section. So I got a sticker on the back of the car, love downtown Franklin, right?
Well, what's real interesting about that is there were so many people here, many of whom I've had the privilege of meeting, that spent countless hours and passion beyond belief to restore what I'm told was once not such a great downtown area. It was like a lot of places across America, kind of got vinyled over in the 60s and 70s. You had chain stores and other things that were on these main streets. And we have just this fantastic group of passionate people that really helped bring downtown Main Street and the surrounding downtown Franklin area back to its old glory. And that's why we have such a vibrant downtown today.
Right. And that's a story in and of itself. Now, if people wanted to research about Franklin, where's the best place for them to go online to do that? Do you know, Bob?
Yeah, I think the best thing for them to do is just Google Visit Franklin.
Okay.
There's the Franklin Visitor Center that's right here. There's if you just Google Franklin, Tennessee, or Williamson County, Tennessee, or Brentwood, Tennessee, you're gonna find lots of nice, interesting tidbits and places that would really have something for everyone, depending on what their interests and passions are.
Great. And we'll lay out the things we talked about in the show notes. I'll get an email from Bob and he'll have that stuff in there. Bob, how could somebody support you, and what would their next steps be to do that?
Well, I think the most important thing is, if I've learned nothing else from this process, and it's been a life experience for me to run for office for the first time, it has been never more apparent to me the importance of voting. And in order for people to make a difference, and part of why I'm running is because I feel like people like me have been able to make a difference by making our voices heard. But there is no better way to do that than to get out and vote. Unfortunately, too often today, our votes, our elections are determined by the few more vocal, more passionate people that are definitely getting out there and voting. And when people stand back and ask what happened, largely it's because enough people who felt maybe in a different way decided not to vote. And so it's really important for people to get out there and vote. The early voting for the August 4th primary and election for other positions, early voting starts July 15th. So from July 15th through July 30th. And all you have to do is Google your local election locations, and then the actual primary date for the state house and elections, general elections for county commissioner and school board, and those is August 4th.
And for somebody that maybe has never voted before, I've got kids that are 23, 27, and 30 or 29, something like that. You know how that goes. I remember when they were turning 18 and they're like, Dad, what do I do? What do they need to do if they've never voted before, Bob? Well, if they've moved into the area, for instance.
Yeah, it's very easy to register to vote. Again, without having to memorize a specific website, just Google register to vote in Williamson County, in Franklin, in Brentwood, and it'll immediately point you in the right direction of the locations where you can register to vote.
Great. Easy peasy. Google is your friend, right?
That's right.
So as we wrap up here, we're coming to a close. Anything else you wanted to add?
Well, I would just say I appreciate this opportunity, Ed. Why I have gotten involved so much is to meet folks like you. I met you at Rotary.
Right.
You know, we're part of the downtown Franklin Rotary together. And you think about like passions, when you think about the mission of Rotary, it's service above self. And that's what we do. And so I've really enjoyed, and why my wife and I plan to stay here for the remainder of our days in Williamson County is because of people like you and all the other folks we've met along the way. It's just such a great place to live, work, and play.
Yeah, and thanks. And right back at you. The reason I started this Nashville2 podcast is because there's so many great stories of organizations and people. And the goal is to have the Rotary president on at some point as she takes office. But there's so much great stuff going on in the Nashville metro and in the towns like Franklin and the counties like Williamson. And nobody's telling the story, right? Nobody's telling the little stories. They're telling the big stories, which is great. But I love that too. And right back at you. So it's been a pleasure to meet you as well. And I look forward to continuing to work with you at Rotary to do those service projects.
Well, I really appreciate that. One of the things we didn't talk about is I actually had a book published back in 2013. It's called Up, The Difference Between Today and Tomorrow Is You, which is really about overcoming adversity and people really seeing that everyone's got potential. And to your point, everyone's got a story. And one of my favorite quotes that I like to use is one attributed to Teddy Roosevelt. And it goes like this, that nobody really cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And when you do the kinds of things like you're doing and recognize that everybody's got a story, you demonstrate that there are so many great people out there who care about a lot of different things.
Exactly. And the goal is to highlight these for as long as God gives me the ability to do it, to highlight these different stories. So learning about different people out there. So folks, if you're listening and you have a story that you want to tell, reach out. We'd love to have you as a guest on Nashville2. This will be on all your podcast platforms. It'll be on all the video platforms. It'll be everywhere that I can get it distributed out there. I love your reviews, love your feedback, love your comments. And Bob, do you have a couple of copies of those books lying around that might make good giveaways?
I sure do.
Okay, so we can organize that. So we'll figure that out, and I'll chuck it in the show notes as well, and we'll figure out how you can win a copy by listening to Nashville2 and letting us know. Hey, again, thanks a lot, Bob. Appreciate having you on the show.
Thank you so much, Ed.
This is the Nashville2 podcast with your host, Edward Fox.